Give me 10 minutes to show you how EQ works, what it does, and how to use it. And no, this is not some comprehensive learn everything that you need to know about EQ kind of a clickbaity video. The goal here is to give you a fast and basic understanding of EQ that you can run with. So let's just do it. EQ is short for equalizer, and what EQs specifically do are alter the volume of specific frequencies. That's it. So a simple EQ plugin would look like this channel EQ, which is right here. This is the stock EQ in Logic, which sounds quite nice. Or we can actually use vintage style EQs, which are going to look a little bit more like this instead, with the knobs instead of more of the visualizer that we can see with the channel EQ strip. They ultimately do the same thing, but the visual aesthetic is going to be the main difference. And yes, they're going to sound a little bit different from each other, but they do the exact same thing. Now for this video, I'm going to be using the channel EQ since it's a bit easier to visualize. So EQs have three primary controls that every EQ is going to have. First is the frequency, which is going to control what specific frequency range we want to alter. You can see we go from 20 all the way down here on the left, all the way up to 20K on the right. This is actual frequencies. Now the frequencies are measured in hertz, which are directly related to pitch. So 440, which would be right around here. You can see 440 down there, 448. That is an A. So if I were to sing an A, that would be 440 hertz. But in the EQ sense, this is what specific tonal characteristic of that sound that we are going to be shaping. Now the second control is volume. We can manipulate frequencies by adding or subtracting volume from that specific frequency. So if I wanted to remove some of this 448 hertz right here, I could subtract that or I could boost it. And as you can see here on this little dial right here, that is showing the amount that we're actually doing it. And that is going to be measured in decibels or dBs. And the third is the shape. There are three types of shapes that we can use. There is a filter, which is going to be something like this right here on the top end, or something like this right here on the bottom end. So this right here on the bottom is what's called a high pass filter, which would cut everything below the amount that we set it to. So this shaded region right here, that red shaded region, is going to be completely eliminated. So as you can see here, I have this set to 98 hertz. So everything below 98 hertz at this type of slope is going to be eliminated from that sound. Now, a shelf is going to look like this. It's going to be a boosted shelf. That right there is a reduced shelf. And as you can see by the shape, it's going to boost or subtract in a shelf-like shape. So it's not going to entirely add or remove, but it comes to a plateau. And the third type is a bell shape, which is mostly used in the middle frequency spectrums right here. And you can see right here, as I boost this, that looks like a bell. Now we can control the actual width of the bell, the specific shape of that bell, with this little bottom number right here, which is called Q control or Q factor. And as we bump that up, as you can see, that is getting more and more narrow. And as we make that smaller, that number is going to add more width to the actual frequency. So something like this right here is going to boost starting at 448 in the middle, but as you can see here, it's actually boosting all the way down into like 40 hertz. It's boosting all the way up into like basically 6K hertz, which that's barely anything. But as we start increasing this number, we could basically make it so it's only impacting 448 hertz. So in a practical sense, these three controls are the most important controls to be aware of. Yes, you can go much, much deeper, but right now, these are the three that we are going to focus on. The pitch of these frequencies go from the lowest all the way down here. So this is going to be super, super, super bassy frequencies. You know, 80 hertz is going to be like where your kick and your bass is sitting, all the way up to 20K, which is going to be extremely sibilant. That's going to be more of the on cymbals and things like that. Now, every sound we can use is ultimately made up of more than one frequency. So even if you're singing in A, which is 440 hertz, there are going to be more frequencies present in that sound than just 440 because of the room you may be in, the harmonic series, and essentially a bunch of other mathematical reasons that we're not going to get into. So you can see in this analyzer here, I'm actually going to have you see me singing in A, which is 440 hertz with this EQ here. And I'm going to turn the analyzer on here so that you can actually see what's happening. So you can actually see right here a little snapshot of everything. You can see that there is more than 440. You can see the 440 is actually basically right there. That's the primary note that's happening. And you can see here there's actually something happening basically 200 hertz underneath of it. And then there's another couple hundred hertz above and all the way up, so on and so forth. That's the room, that's the harmonic series and other things that are actually impacting that sound. So it's not just that one frequency that's present, even though that's the only note that I actually sang. So just because you sing a note at 440 40, for example, there are going to be other frequencies present in that sound that you need to be aware of. Now, this matters because if you're working with a recorded vocal, for example, then that vocal may actually have frequencies that are causing problems within the context of a production, and EQ can be used to fix it by cutting out the offending frequencies. So in this vocal, for example, a lot of times vocal recordings are going to have this mid-range woofy sound that is not desirable. So you can actually use EQ to remove that and correct it. So looking at this vocal again, if we listen to this, I want to show you what I'm talking about. If I were to boost right around 200 hertz, you're going to notice this. Listen, watch to this. Now, if you're wearing headphones, you should really be able to hear that, and if not, you should put some headphones on or use monitors. So you can hear that is really not a great sound. It's really woofy. Yet this sound is often present in vocals, especially for home studio producers who don't have a well-treated environment, and it also depends a lot on the microphone that you're actually using. But we can cut off these offending frequencies by removing, say, 3 to 5 dB. Now, this cut right here is actually a pretty wide cut. I'd probably want to be a little bit more surgical with it, so let's go ahead and remove that. So that right there got rid of it. Now, just because I'm saying this is what you may need to do does not mean that you always need to do this. In this particular case, depending on the actual track and the context of that vocal, I might not actually need to do that. This is where applying these concepts is going to come down to using your own ears. Another example is a piano. Pianos are incredibly resonant instruments, and they're going to contain a lot of different frequencies. So when you're thinking about how to approach a piano, if there's something sounding off on that sound or it's sounding bad, then you should focus entirely on identifying where that sound is in the frequency spectrum. And you can do that by boosting a narrow band bell to the point to where you can clearly hear it and then sweep through the frequencies like this. You can obviously hear how that is sweeping through. Now, this is not something that you should rely on long term, but you can use this as a way to train your ears. So if you're thinking, there's something kind of mid-rangey that doesn't sound great, you can use this to boost and find and identify where that problem is, and then do the opposite. Actually go back and cut. So say around 250 hertz there was a problem, you can just cut that. So as you sweep, you're probably going to feel like it all sounds bad, because ultimately it's all going to sound bad, because if you boost any frequency enough, it's going to sound bad. So use this only to identify where you actually need to cut, and don't just start adding cuts everywhere because all these frequencies sound bad when they're boosted. On the flip, there may be frequencies that you want to add into a sound for color, to add brightness on this piano, for example, or add low end on something like bass or kick. So this piano right here, I could go ahead and add some brightness with something like a high shelf right here, and maybe boost it around 6K, 8K, or somewhere in that ballpark, and we can see how this will sound. So let's just go ahead and shut this off and listen to the piano completely bypass on the EQ. Okay, and let's go ahead and add this. I'm going to be a little bit dramatic, more so than I'd probably be in real life, but just so you can hear it. So as you can hear, as I really start cranking up, it starts sounding a little weird. So here's off, and then I'll turn it on. So this is a little bit subtle, right? It's not like this, whoa, that's such a big difference, but it does sound brighter. Now, one big thing to note is that when you boost EQ, it's going to increase the overall volume of that sound. So keep an eye on your fader to make sure that you don't get out of control with clipping. Now, most EQs are going to have multiple bands, and a band is simply the number of times you can adjust the EQ. So in the channel EQ that I have here, I have 4 different bell curves, I have 2 different shelves, and then I have 2 different filters. Not all EQs are going to have the same amount. Some will only even have a single band. Just because you have several bands does not mean you have to use them all at once. A huge mistake I see producers and mixers make is making EQ moves that are totally unnecessary, which usually ends up making it worse. If your EQ looks like this right here, I would argue that 9 out of 10 times you are doing more harm than good, so just be careful about that. Now, if you're feeling stuck making less than pro sounding productions, then you should really check out my production course, Producer Accelerator, which has helped over 500 producers level up their own productions. And this week we just released our new 3-day sneak peek, which gives you a chance to have 3 days of lessons sent right to you from the full course to get a feel for it. It's totally free. You'll get a ton of value from it if you want to increase your own production quality. You can click the link right over here to get it, and we'll see you in the next video.